The name of this enigmatic site is Angkor Wat, and like all megalithic sites, it was likely constructed at the end of the apocalypse, and later reoccupied by King Suryavarman II. He is given credit because he uses similar iconography as the temple, but that is a sign of rehabitation. That is, they picked back up the iconography and began using it. The name of the site, Angkor, is actually a Sanskrit word and not a Khumerian word. That's because this temple was created under the Sanskrit language and consciousness. It was later then re-inhabited by the Khumer language, who adopted the name into theirs. The name didn't come from the Khumer language. It was adapted into the Khumer language. One characteristic of megalithic sites is that many of them have the same naming conventions, which all tend to be rooted in a shared Proto-Indo-European language. In this case, Angkor and Anchor, as in the anchor of a boat, are cognate, and Wat simply means building. By this definition, the site is an anchor building, or temple anchor might be more accurate. And as we all know, anchors go into the ground through water. In other words, what we are saying is that this site connects to the Ionosphere, and the Ionosphere connects to the sun. And when that current was flowing, one of the most prominent bas reliefs at Angkor Wat depicts the myth of the churning of the ocean of milk. Milk is white, and light is white. And so the site is used for churning the light, where Vishnu, in his turtle avatar, Kurma, supports the churning process. This scene is giving instructions on a current of energy they are employing at the site, and exactly which god you need to worship at to start the motion. And we can make the assumption that the temple is linking with the current of the sun, because like other megalithic sites, this temple aligns with the rising sun during the equinoxes, and its central tower is thought to symbolize Mount Meru, which is associated with the sun in Hindu cosmology. This is where things get interesting, because we can blend together other ideas already established, such as Charles Cause's discovery that the ancient mount or mountain in most mythologies and religions is actually referencing the mountain of the moon. And my research has extended not just the moon being the mountain referenced, but the mountain is actually referencing the creation of the moon, where the material being stripped up from the surface of the earth forming the Atlantic Ocean formed a mountain from the earth to the moon. The moon then represented the perfect balance between the earth and the sun, between me and Ru, or as some knew the god back in the day, Ra, the sun god. To get a larger sense of the circuit, let's note that Angkor Wat begins with Ankh, as in Ankh Lung, which we discussed at the Temple of Gunung Padang. So we have Angkor and we have Ankh Lung, both of which reference first and foremost the Ankh created by the induction bulb of the Indonesian ark formed in the apocalypse. Ankh, Ankh Lung, Angkor Wat. The second temple at the site of Angkor Wat is called the Baiyun Temple. The name suggests that, like the oracle chamber at the Temple of Delphi, this temple was used for divination, with the name translating into several languages that reference the site as opening a portal to higher knowledge, to enlightenment, just like at Gunung Padang. Check this out. When we draw a line from the center of the Baiyun Temple to Gunung Padang, we begin by perfectly bisecting what are known as the North and South libraries, by the slimmest of margins. When we arrive at Gunung Padang, we find that there are alignments with the rock placements at the temple, suggesting that these are part of an electrical circuit that is interacting with each other electromagnetically over long distances. One of the more unique features of the Indochina Peninsula is its square shape. And anytime I see a square shape, I think of Lian Chua's chaos circle. The peninsula is a square. It is surrounded by a circle. And in the middle, there is a triangle. Electrically speaking, the middle triangle represents the electrical ground of a capacitor called a delta Y. It is the delta which form the Korad Plateau into the shape of its triangle. The circle is then the remainder of the delta Y circuit called the Y. So the triangle and the circle are easy, but that still brings us back to the square box. And it's important to understand that square box because we find Angkor Wat in the very center of that square box.
In this case, it's almost exactly like X marks the spot. Talk about a find to shake the earth and our history.
Angkor Wat is just taking advantage of this local electromagnetic field created by the delta Y as it rests as part of the larger circuit within the boundaries of the area. Because of the poles that rest on the two sides of these structures, we can say that the current bias is created between these two pools. So the two main pools are called the western and eastern boreas, and they are slightly offset, with the western boree being slightly south of the eastern boree. And oddly, there is a third boree just north called the north boree. We're going to finish with that one. When I see the slight offset nature of these pools, I began thinking about an induced magnetic field rotation being the heart of the function here. The field rotated clockwise, with a fan-like blowing nature going from south to north. You can see the increased positive charge in the shape of a plasmoid across the surface north of the site. The induced magnetic field between these two sites very well could have been up to 12 miles across, and when working, it moved the air with the positive charge like a modern-day induction fan. To a degree, this machine still works to this day. In part, the water of the pools kept a ground charge from building up around this magnetic field, and thus it prevented the surface from eroding away. This main arc of induction had a counter-rotating band on the inside at the top, on the north side. The main coil rotated west to east, and the counter-rotation that it created rotated east to west. I'm going to finish by talking about the North Boree and the temple in the middle called the Neak Peen Temple. While the magnetic field was running, the Western Boree produced oxygen as a byproduct to fill the lungs of the people that lived in the area. In the Eastern Boree, the electrolysis process produced a highly ionized pool of hydrogenated water, H2. But the North Boree, that was different, because in the middle of the North Boree is the Temple of Neak Peen. At the temple, the energy was split into 4 cardinal pools, and each pool had a different animal. The 4 animals are an elephant, a human, a horse, and a lion.
Dig this. In the very middle of the lake, surrounded by the 4 animal head temples, is the temple to the entwining serpents. Serpents are ever and always a reference to an electrical field line of energy, and that field line was coming down right here at this temple called Neak Peen. That electrical field line was then split into its 4 component functions of resistance, capacitance, inductance, and memristance. They then bathed in the water it produced, depending on the energy that they needed and the healing they were attempting to do.
These animals symbolize the 4 elements and are part of the temple's design of instructions. They reflect the Hindu belief that these 4 forces drove the activities at the site. Remember when I said that Angkor Wat sits directly on the X of Chua's circuit? Even more accurately, this temple, the Temple of Neak Peen, is the X of the X. Q Flint.
In this case, it's almost exactly like X marks the spot. Talk about a find to shake the earth and our history.
Man, I love that guy. In short, the ancients created a machine at Angkor Wat that grew their food and healed their people, and it also produced fresh air during a time where air was thin. The Fountain of Youth was real, and there was more than one around the world. The field of green growth and relatively intact nature of this machine suggests that this site has the potential to be at least partially turned back on. We could reestablish the canals and fill everything back up with water. I know we can do that with great certainty. The question is, what else is broke? These two-tone discoloration changes at Angkor Wat remind me of the head of the Sphinx. A polarity change occurred here, and it left a carbonization on these highly polarized surfaces during the failure. Parts of this thing can be replaced, maybe even upgraded.
You make a good point here. We could rip the seam back open. The town here at Angkor Wat is, after all, called Seam Reap. They were reaping the benefits of the seam they opened. We just need some additional technology, maybe. I'm down.
Seam reap. Never knew. Let's rip that thing.
When they say that Angkor Wat was a city, they mean a literal city, like shopping and healthcare and oracles. It's all under one roof.
Excuse me. Pardon me. Excuse me. Hey, gentlemen.
Oh, much better. Oh, thank you. I couldn't breathe through my nose. Oh, much better. Thank you.